Hi guys, I'm Mick Russell and I'm in Year 10 Catholic College for Wodonga, and today I want to talk you through a bit of an issue that I've been investigating recently. The issue that I've been investigating is whether junk food should be as readily available in school canteens as it is. And this issue came about, it's been about for a few years now, but in May 2015, the New South Wales government in particular ordered a review of school canteens because of concerns about an obesity epidemic in school-aged children. And just to give you a bit of background information, the New South Wales government has a project called the Healthy School Canteen Strategy that required all New South Wales schools since 2010 to provide a certain level of healthy and nutritious food. And there were some foods that are available and they were categorised as green foods. Some foods which the canteens had to be a little bit picky and choosy on, they were called amber foods, and any foods that were given a red category, they were foods that the canteens were meant to avoid altogether. If you want to see some more information about those particular guidelines, I've included a bit of a link here, and that takes you straight to a big document that talks you through the exact guidelines for the National Healthy School Canteens guidelines. And that was something that has been in New South Wales school in particular since 2010. So there's a little bit of background information on the issue and what's kind of caused it. Basically, I looked at 3 articles over the last few weeks, and they came from different sources. The first article was one that I found in the Sydney Morning Herald, and it was about how some school canteens are still selling items that were listed as banned according to the National Healthy Schools Canteen Guide. And so that was in the Sydney Morning Herald. The second article source that I found was a radio interview on ABC National where they interviewed a lecturer called Kieran Rooney. Sorry, I skipped forward ahead there. Kieran Rooney. And he was talking about junk food and the school canteens, and whether the logos that were used by some companies were a little bit misleading and were, providing or allowing students to make poor choices when really we should be encouraging them to make good choices when it comes to eating well. And the third interview that I'm going to talk about today, or article that I'm going to talk about today, is one that I found from the Drum website. And this is also an article that's an opinion piece that was written by Kieran Rooney, who was also on the radio program that I listened to. So it was interesting to see that he had followed this issue for a fair while. And it was an article that he'd written in early 2014. So basically, the context for this article it was written by Professor Kieran Rooney, and it was an opinion piece, and it was published on the website The Drum on the 27th of Jan 2014. And he makes comments on the National Healthy Schools Canteens project and the issues he has with the guidelines, and he also talks about the issues he has with the advertising of some foods that say that they are canteen approved, but in reality he thinks that they're not. Basically, there's a number of ways this article persuades, but I think one way that's really persuasive is just the fact that the author, Kieran Rooney, has a certain amount of status. He has authority and appears very credible because he is a professor of diet and physical exercise. He lectures at the University of Sydney, and he's been involved in diet and exercise and national studies for a number of years, over 10 years. So he kind of makes it, even we're given this information in the article, and this makes us feel like this person knows exactly what they're talking about. And so we're more inclined to believe him, I think. Another way that it persuades is by the headline, giving a tick to junk food at schools. In this headline, it suggests that the New South Wales government is actually helping the junk food situation because it's giving a tick to some junk food and saying that it qualifies as food that's allowed to be sold at canteens, when Professor Rooney feels that those foods shouldn't actually be sold at the canteens. So the headline is a little bit, it's almost an attack on the government in a way. Once you read the rest of the article, that becomes fairly apparent. Another way that it persuades is through the image and the caption that's associated with the article on the website. The image appears to be a children's hand grabbing some bickies that don't really look very nutritious, And the caption below the photo talks about children's health as a priority. And this seems to make, the readers feel like we've got to make sure children are being looked after and that we're trying to create healthy children. And so maybe it starts to position us to feel that this article is something that should be listened to because children are really important and we need to make sure they're looked after all the time. His first argument, once the article begins, is based around the children and how he really stresses that we've got to look after the children and that we need to ensure a healthy adult population. And I think it makes readers feel more likely to feel that canteens need to change because at the end of the day, all parents, especially parents who read this article, want to provide for their children and do the right thing by their children. And so this argument really focuses on the welfare of children and the health of children. He then goes on to kind of attack the National Healthy Schools Canteens project because he uses words like weak when he describes it. And this helps to position readers to feel negatively about the recommendations of the project because when you think about it, if something is meant to be looking after, and promoting healthy schools, then if it's described as a weak initiative, then it kind of makes us feel like we don't have a lot of trust and faith in the government's suggestions in this project. So that's the second argument that he uses. The third one he does is he kind of lists a number of arguments after that. And if you look at the little screen snapshot of produced there, you can see where he says, the appearance of such labels on products in supermarkets is concerning for at least 3 reasons. He then goes on and ticks off the 3 reasons that he listed. Sometimes making a list of problems actually simplifies the arguments for the reader, and it also makes them feel as if there are a lot of issues with the canteen guidelines. So much so that this author has put them in a list for us. And so this positions us to feel like there's lots of problems with the canteen guidelines, and we're more likely to agree with suggestions that Professor Rooney makes about fixes that we need to incorporate into the canteen guidelines. Lastly, in his article, he comes back to the issue of children as a priority, and he makes governments out to be greedy by allowing certain companies to provide labels that are likely to manipulate children and get them to choose the poor choice over the more healthy choice. And so by finishing his article, by coming back to the importance of children as, looking after their welfare, it's more likely to make readers, especially parent readers, agree with him because it, again, places the children as priority number 1. And it also makes them feel negative towards the government policy and the canteen project guidelines because it uses words like manipulate the process, which makes them seem a little bit sneaky. And health has to be a priority over company profits, which makes them seem really money-oriented rather than focusing on the health of children. And also, whenever he refers to foods of poor quality, he uses the word junk, which has a real negative connotation and doesn't make us feel like those foods are very nutritious at all. And so finally, he wraps up his argument by coming back to the same point of protect the children that he began with. So it's a really kind of neat wrap up to his article. So that's some analysis for you on the article that I've chosen. These are the references to a number of places that I investigated in the lead up to this analysis, and the last one there is that same link to the National Healthy Schools Canteen Project. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation and thanks for listening.